Excellent. What we're looking at in this session is, in a way, the relaunch of our Suborbital Launch Challenge, and I'm going to be giving you an update on all of that. So what was the original challenge? If we remember back quite some time, the original challenge was to design, build, test, and launch a suborbital payload to use data collected up to 100 kilometers and 8 minutes weightlessness, and to actually use that data, analyze that data, and then the top 3 presentations to be awarded orbital CubeSat launches. All of that still stands. That is still the reward. That is still actually the challenge. However, it's this 100 kilometers, and you can see I've put a little asterisk in there. It's that 100-kilometer altitude that Blue Shift Aerospace is having a challenge with at the moment. There are a number of factors. The first factor is that they're struggling to secure a spaceport that they can launch from, where they don't need to take all of their own infrastructure. So that has been a bit of a challenge for them, because when one actually goes to those altitudes, it needs to be regarded as a commercial launch and not an amateur launch. So there's a lot more safety protocols involved and a lot more infrastructure requirements. Another thing is that with inflation in the US and drying up on a lot of venture capital, they haven't been able to raise the funding that they thought they would, that they thought they had in the pipeline to be able to develop their rocket to that point. So we're not saying that it's not going to happen, but there is a further delay. So what are we going to do about that? So what we've done is we've had great conversations with Blue Shift Aerospace and others. And what I'm proposing to you today is a choice, because we actually do have a choice. In our last update, what I'd mentioned to you was that we were going to have a mission before the end of Q2 2023. So we definitely still want to deliver on that deadline. What we're doing is, most of our participants are in the Northern Hemisphere. So June is too late for them because it's going into exam time. It's the end of the academic year. So what we've put a stake in the ground. We've said the week of May the 15th, 2023, what we will have, and that has been confirmed, is some kind of a test with Blue Shift Aerospace. So it's either going to be an engine test, a static fire engine test, or it's going to be a low altitude launch. And when I talk about low altitude launch, we're probably looking at lower than 10 kilometers, so that they can actually still then launch from as an amateur launch. And Mike Miller, you are the professional with this, so you need to put me straight if I'm talking rubbish here. So that is the one option that we have. The other option we have is to actually wait for Blue Shift Aerospace to be ready for a suborbital launch. They have guaranteed us that they're going to keep the pricing that they'd originally proposed to us. So waiting is not going to cost anybody any money. It's only going to cost time. What we've done is we've requested proposals from a number of other launch providers who could provide us with a suborbital launch. They've come back to us saying that they have a massive backlog because nothing happened during the pandemic, and they've got a lot of university payloads, test experiment payloads, that they still need to launch. So they haven't been able to come back to us with either actually dollar prices or quotes, because it's really far into the future. So yeah, this is what I'd like to put on the table, is that we either participate in some kind of Blue Shift project, or otherwise we wait for them to launch. What I am going to do is, after the session, I'm going to send you an email not only with a link to this video, but also there'll be some links as well that'll take you to the engine test that we conducted with a number of students and their payloads in November 2022. And that was really very successful, and it was a massive learning opportunity. I'm getting a little bit of background noise. Let me just see who it is. Okay, I think I've solved that. Okay, great. Yeah, so yes, that engine test was a fantastic learning experience. The students, what they did is they put together their payloads with actually that BlueShift kit that they had received with the extended core. They wrote and they flashed their code to this core, inserted the SD card, they collected their data through the process, and then they've been analyzing their data afterwards. Some of the code worked, some of it didn't work. We were very lucky that we had 5 payloads together on this test. So we had different versions of code from different student groups, etc. So amongst everybody, certainly they were able to collect the data. Last week, as late as last week, we had more discussions with BlueShift Aerospace, and they are definitely looking at doing a low altitude launch. So we may find that on the day or closer to the time, we actually have a choice. So I can see that there are 2 questions in the chat. Okay, so Mike Miller is saying, oh, what a relief. Mike Miller is saying, hi, Judy, not rubbish, I'm sure. But do they mean that their amateur to commercial status shifts with respect to FCC or with respect to FAA? In other words, status of radio or status of spacecraft operation? Mike, I'm terribly sorry, I actually don't know. I do know that they've had some delays, certainly with their radio development, but I think it's probably more in terms of the spacecraft operation that they have that delay. So I'm terribly sorry. I will need to actually come back to you on that. Before I move on, are there any other questions or remarks? Daniel Lee and Cody Harris. I was just wondering if you wanted to chat a little bit about the engine test, if I should stop sharing. God, there's Daniel. Daniel, over to you.
If Cody's busy. So a couple of things from the engine test that was valuable, and really more so kind of in the sphere of K-12 schools, less so for schools that are looking to actually test their own payloads. The engine test was a great opportunity for students to be able to actually go through the process of collecting data and then actually analyzing that data. So there were a lot of progressions made in terms of, okay, here's a data set that we've collected from a live static fire. You know, how is it that we can then actually be able to analyze? So students on our side were able to take a fast Fourier transform of that data and be able to isolate resonant frequencies. And that was great, specifically in the context of BlueShift, because it was our students directly being able to supply data at get their engineers to be thinking about what might those causes for those resonant frequencies actually be. So it was a great example of, you know, actual academic context directly leading to improvements in engine design, as well as further implementations down the road. Obviously, that was something that wasn't necessarily planned as being a part of that process, but with all those delays, it was a great way for us to kind of introduce a second byline. The reason why I say K-12 schools might be interested in that in particular is specifically because it is direct application and a direct process where students are analyzing data and they're going through the process of practicing what it is that data retrieval of their own payloads is going to look like, right? So once they make it to suborbital, how is it that they're actually collecting and then making a statement about what their data is telling them? And that's something that in terms of the suborbital process of all the Canvas modules is a pretty critical part. And it's a part that isn't necessarily as as clear, in my opinion, previously to this opportunity, but now we have something directly that students can point to as being able to state, you know, and increase their confidence in not just what it is that they're collecting, but being able to make a statement about what they collected. So really kind of looking at it from a systems engineer perspective of not just the scientist or just the engineer, but really kind of looking at the collapse and collaboration of those two things. For, you know, 9 to 12 and university and postgrad institutions that are looking to test their own custom payloads, obviously strapping your payload onto a rocket that's on not leaving the ground probably isn't the most helpful, but you know, for specifically students that haven't had, you know, novel opportunities to actually go through a data analysis and a deep dive in terms of raw data and then manipulating it so that they can understand what that data is telling them. I can't think of too many other opportunities that are as enriching as that, and you know, kind of low cost in terms of what it is that students need to be able to provide. So it's a nice way to wrap up for those groups that have been following along with the suborbital launch, at least for this year, until obviously that suborbital launch is secured.
Great, Daniel, thank you very much. Yes, I have to say, from my perspective, I was actually surprised at how rewarding and how fulfilling that project was. I was able to be there for one part of it, which was the cold flow through test. Very, very interesting. And what was nice about that was that we were able to really get close up, and the students were able to actually, you know, integrate their payloads and do all of that kind of thing. So yeah, it was surprisingly great, I found. And yeah, as Daniel mentioned, the learning coming from it has really been surprisingly good. Is there anybody else who'd like to ask any more questions before I move on? Okay, so if you would like to take that option, there are going to be some deadlines. So what we would like is, we would like from you confirming your participation by March 15th, which is just less than a month away. The payloads themselves, so I'm not sure if you can see my camera, but the payloads themselves, which includes the extended core that you've received as part of the kit, with the code already flashed on this core, on this ESP32, with your SD card in place and whatever other sensors you want to fly. You have received some prototype boards. So if you want to make up your own components, you can certainly do so. But there's a very, very hard and fast deadline, and that is by April 15th. We would need those payloads to be in the USA, in Boston with Cody. And then those integrated payloads, Cody will integrate everything and get it to Blue Shift Aerospace by 1st of May. And then the launch is scheduled for the 15th of May. So that is really for you to take into consideration those deadlines. There is an easier option, and that is that there was code that was developed for the previous engine test. So if you actually just want to use that code, Daniel and his students will definitely be able to share that with you. So if you are concerned that there's not sufficient time to actually develop and test your own code, then certainly what you could do is you could use the code that was used before. Daniel, am I forgetting something or missing something out here?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd also like to come back to Ruthan's comment much earlier in the session, you know, and also seconded by Fred Bruweiler. Dr. Massa at Pennsylvania State universities also had some challenges with students changing and, the previous cohort leaving and new people, fresh people coming in. So what we're doing is that we are reminding you that there is the Canvas course that's available. We will be adding the engine test as a module to that Canvas course. All of the suborbital launch materials still apply for a low altitude launch, so you wouldn't need to worry about that. Everything is there, and I highly encourage everybody to sign up to the Discord channel because there's a lot of collaboration going on there, especially around the code development for these payloads. Good, that's it from me. A whole 17 minutes. Cody, I can see you coming in.
That's perfect. I was just gonna say, we'll make sure we have an invite link to the Discord channel for those who haven't joined already. We'll put that in the follow-up email as well, so you have everything in one place from today's call.
Excellent, Cody. Thank you very much for that. The reason why Cody is there's a lot of noise in the background. He's actually at university at the moment, so he's probably running from one lecture theatre to the other. So, Cody, thank you very much for taking the time out. Fred, over to you.
Well, I was just sort of I've been a little out of it recently, and with all this shift back and forth. So should we go to Cody, or if we have any specific questions, where do I go now? Because as I said, we sort of have a shift in people working on this, students and everything. So we need to get up to speed again. We're halfway there, but we're halfway there everywhere, but not there, if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Yeah, you can definitely come to me first, and if I can't answer your questions, then I'll help you put you in touch with whoever's best suited for that.
Cody, I also realize you're a very busy guy as well, too.
I do wear many hats. I do. That's all right.
Okay.
Fred, and for everybody as well, is that Cody is still the program manager for this project. And he's very, very, very efficient at passing it on. So don't worry. He will pass the ball and it'll be caught by either myself, Bianca, Daniel, or somebody else on the team. But yeah, the best place to start is always with Cody, because he is responsible for this project. So yeah, I would say that's your starting point. Is there anything else from anybody? I was actually before we end, Dr. Mensah, I was wondering, are you going to be presenting at I believe that there's a space conference on your doorstep in the near future. I was wondering if you and your team were going to be presenting there.
Probably. It's in April, right?
Yes.
West Africa.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's in April, yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Mr. Timidayo recently. Yeah, so yes.
Excellent.
Are you coming?
No, unfortunately we can't make it. But yeah, so I was wondering if you were going to be there.
Yes, I will be there.
Excellent. Yeah. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Daniel.
Yeah, Judy, I do have a teacher side question. So one of the things that it stated was that it was a lower altitude launch and or engine test. I just want to make sure that the teachers and myself have clarification then on is it both that's being offered, or is it one or the other? Are we voting, or how's that going to work?
It's going to be for, if I let me go back to that slide. Daniel, where we make the choice is here with the scales. Either we participate in May or we wait.
Okay.
So the thing is that we don't actually know yet whether it's going to be an engine test or a low altitude launch. From the payload side, it's going to be absolutely identical. What is submitted it's going to be exactly the same payload, and whether it leaves the ground or not, that we're only going to be able to determine a little bit later on. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, just to reiterate, please, if you would like to participate in the experiments and the activities in May, please confirm with Cody. I'm also happy if you want to mail me and I will forward it on to Cody. Please confirm with us by the 15th of March.